Good morning and thank you all for joining us. You're watching our mid-morning edition of Arirang News on this Thursday, April 23rd. Coming to you live from Seoul, I'm Shin Se-min. At the top of the hour, here are the stories making the headlines. A dangerously weak start to the year. The South Korean economy contracts 1.4% in the first 3 months of 2020 amid the fallout from the coronavirus. It's the country's worst quarterly GDP results since the 2008 global financial crisis. U.S. President Donald Trump issues an executive order barring new green cards being issued for 60 days. It's one in a series of steps by Trump to give unemployed Americans a better chance of getting back to work. Plus, Washington is closely monitoring the goings-on inside North Korea as speculation rages about Kim Jong-un's health. America's top diplomat says he's got nothing new to add regarding the North Korean leader's current health conditions. Our starting point this morning is the limp start to 2020 for South Korea's economy. The country posted its biggest economic contraction since the 2008 global financial crisis in the first 3 months of this year. Self-isolation and COVID-19 health concerns slammed consumption and forced thousands of businesses to close. For more, we have our Yoon Jung-min on the line for us. So, Jung-min, a downswing was to be expected given the dire circumstances, but walk us through the numbers.
Sure, Semin. The Bank of Korea revealed this morning that South Korea's first quarter GDP growth was down 1.4% from the previous quarter. This is the biggest drop in over 11 years since the fourth quarter in 2008, when the world economy was enduring the peak of the global financial crisis. On year, the country's GDP grew 1.3%, but that's also the lowest growth in around a decade. Private consumption fell 6.4% as goods and services were hammered by the COVID-19 outbreak. Growth for South Korea's wholesale, retail, restaurant, and accommodation sectors fell over 6%, while transportation plunged over 12%. Government spending edged up 0.9%. Construction investment expanded 1.3%, while facilities investment was up 0.2%. South Korea's exports were down 2%. This was mainly because of falling outbound shipments of cars, machinery, and chemical products. However, semiconductor exports were up. Imports dropped over 4% due mostly to crude oil and cars.
Now, Jung-min, we also hear that South Korea's finance chief convened a meeting this morning with related economy ministers. Now there, he warned of a greater COVID-19 economic impact in the second quarter. Tell us more.
Well, sure, Simon. Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi said there's a rising possibility the real economy and job market experience shocks during and after the second quarter due to the worsening global recession. Hong said recovery in investment and exports since the end of last year has somewhat cushioned a sharp decline for South Korea's GDP growth in the first quarter. He added the government will do its utmost to ensure domestic consumption and exports pick up in the second quarter, despite looming downside risks. The Finance Ministry is expected to focus on boosting job numbers in April and May. In June, the South Korean government will announce its economic policies for the second half of the year. Back to you, Semin.
Thank you, Yoon Jung-min, for those updates on the nation's GDP growth outlook. And President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Wednesday that will impose a 60-day ban on issuing green cards for people looking to permanently live and work in the U.S. Listen to this.
In order to protect our great American workers, I've just signed an executive order temporarily suspending immigration into the United States. This will ensure that unemployed Americans of all backgrounds will be first in line for jobs as our economy reopens.
Now, the 60-day pause on issuing green cards doesn't affect temporary work visas. Exemptions will also be given to medical personnel and other essential workers fighting the virus, spouses and minor children of U.S. citizens, and certain other groups. The green card ban could be extended depending on the economic fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic. And now for an update on the COVID-19 situation around the world. In a major development, the first U.S. death from the COVID-19 turns out to have taken place 20 days before previously thought. In Europe, the situation seemed to stabilize and countries are loosening their measures on restrictions. Over in Asia, another cluster infection has been reported on a cruise ship docked in Japan. Our Jonguns reports.
A major change in the timeline of COVID-19 spread in the United States. Autopsies have found the first coronavirus death in the U.S. occurred in early February, 20 days earlier than previously thought. Health officials in California said Tuesday that 2 people who died on February 6th and 17th in Santa Clara County had the virus.
As you know, last night we announced 3 deaths from COVID-19 that prior were unknown to us. 2 of these individuals died in early February and 1 died in early March.
Initially, the country's first fatality was thought to have occurred on February 26th. It is not yet known how the people contracted the virus, but they're thought to be community transmissions. In the meantime, the U.S. saw another big surge in fatalities on Tuesday, reporting a record of over 2,800 new deaths. That brings the total number of COVID-19 deaths in the country to over 47,000 as of Wednesday local time. In Europe, the situation seems to be stabilizing, and countries are beginning to ease restrictions. Italy has approved agricultural and manufacturing sectors to resume activities starting April 27th. And once the previous lockdown order officially ends on May 4th, commerce and other businesses will also join, along with the possibility of bringing back sports that have been suspended for roughly 2 months. Other European countries on Balkan Peninsula, like Serbia and Albania, have already taken similar measures. But the UK says, given the circumstances there, it is too early for Britain to consider doing the same. In the meantime, another cluster infection was reported on a cruise ship docked in Japan on Wednesday. 34 people on an Italian cruise ship that's been docked at a port in Nagasaki Prefecture for repairs have tested positive for COVID-19. This comes after the massive cluster from the Princess Diamond cruise ship in February. On Wednesday, the number of newly confirmed cases in Japan rose back to the 400 range. The overall number of cases of COVID-19 in Japan is now more than 11,000. That's have topped 280. Jonguns, Arirang News.
The South Korean government has introduced basic quarantine guidelines for the public once the country makes a transition into everyday life quarantine from the current social distancing measures. Now, this coming as the country continues to see a sharp downtrend in newly confirmed COVID-19 cases. Our Kim Hyo-sun with more.
South Korea's quarantine authorities have announced basic quarantine guidelines that the public needs to abide by on individual and community levels. There are 5 basic rules for personal quarantine. Stay home for 3 to 4 days when you feel sick to get a sufficient amount of rest. Keep a physical distance of an arm's length. People are also advised to wash their hands thoroughly with soap and water for at least 30 seconds and stick to polite coughing etiquette. The quarantine authorities say it's important to ventilate at least twice a day while advising individuals to stay psychologically close to family and friends despite social distancing. The supplementary rules for individuals include wearing protective face masks and abiding by daily health guidelines for high-risk groups, including senior citizens. On a community level, people are advised to designate a certain person to be responsible for quarantine and calls for the rest of the group to be fully cooperative with him or her. Daily body temperature screenings are also required to keep the community safe. Above all, the quarantine authorities highlight cooperation is the key.
The guidelines are available on the website of the Health Ministry and on the COVID-19 monitoring webpage. They will be finalized after thorough review and will be distributed to the public.
The Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures Headquarters also plans to provide specific guidelines for different settings, including public transportation, restaurants, shopping malls, and wedding ceremonies.
Around 20 guidelines will be released on Friday, focusing on essential daily life quarantine measures.
While these guidelines are not compulsory but advisory in nature, health authorities believe there's a need to make some of the most essential ones compulsory. They're also mulling fining those who fail to comply. 김여선, Arirang News.
Now, as reports, rumors, and intense speculation swirls about the state of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's health conditions, the U.S. government says it's closely monitoring what's going on inside the regime, again reiterating that they've heard nothing new about Kim's physical condition. Our Lee Seung-jae with more.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo at a press briefing Wednesday said Washington is closely watching what's happening inside North Korea amid numerous reports its leader Kim Jong-un is gravely ill. With so much secrecy surrounding Kim and the lack of further information, Pompeo insisted there's nothing else to add other than the fact that they're following the issue closely. During Wednesday's press briefing at the Pentagon, the Vice Chairman of U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, General John Hyten, also reiterated that Washington has no information about Kim's health. However, he indicated it was the U.S. military's assumption that Kim Jong-un is still in full control of North Korea and its military.
So I assume that Kim Jong-un is still in full control of the Korean nuclear forces and the Korean military forces. I have no reason not to assume that.
The remarks follow a CNN report on Monday that cited an unidentified U.S. official as saying the U.S. was looking into intelligence that Kim Jong-un is in grave danger after a surgical procedure. However, according to South Korean government officials, no unusual signs have been detected in the north to suggest something may be wrong with the leader's health. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
A report by a panel of experts for the UN's North Korea Sanctions Committee suggests the regime continues to use loopholes to push ahead with its illegal activities. As well as continuing its development on weapons of mass destruction, the regime is illegally importing oil, exporting coal, and stealing foreign currency through cyber attacks. Our Oh Jung-hee reports.
North Korea is finding more and more ingenuitive ways to evade the UN Security Council sanctions. A report written by a panel of experts for the UN's North Korea Sanctions Committee says illegal imports of refined petroleum last year were well over the 50,000 barrel cap. Unlike in the past when North Korean vessels carry petroleum into the port, now foreign vessels are taking it to the regime. Plus, ship-to-ship transfers are taking place between foreign vessels and third country vessels, making it more difficult to detect. The report also says that the regime earned $370 million by selling 3.7 million tons of coal for the first 8 months of 2019. Coal exports are completely banned by UN sanctions. To earn cash within the international sanctions framework, North Korea is upgrading its cyber attack strategy. The UN panel report says the regime is believed to have conducted 35 attacks on financial institutions around the world, obtaining $2 billion. The North sees cyber attacks as a low-risk, high-return way to earn money. The regime avoids detection by seizing cryptocurrency and swapping it for cash. The report adds North Korea continues to advance its missile technology, testing new types of ballistic missiles and working on submarine-launched ballistic missiles. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
And North Korea has reported to the World Health Organization that as of last Friday, it has tested a total of 740 people for coronavirus, and they all tested negative. The WHO representative to North Korea, Edwin Salvador, said Wednesday that 212 North Koreans are currently in quarantine. Since December 31st of last year, 25,139 people have been released from quarantine in the north. He also added the WHO has been providing technical support as well as sharing guidelines and strategies with North Korea to combat the deadly virus. The WHO is also providing the north with personal protective equipment, which is currently located in the Chinese city of Dandong. Salvador said the WHO will cooperate with Pyongyang to bring in the supplies. The north has 235 rapid response teams, each consisting of 5 medical personnel dispersing throughout the country. Good
morning. It's been colder than usual this week, not to mention a very chilly start to this morning. The low in Seoul was just 2.9 degrees Celsius, way below the season norms. But readings will gradually rise, but do expect to see cooler than average temperatures through the weekend. The wind has died down and there will be good air quality across the country, but a dry weather advisory has been reissued for the east coastal regions. That's including Daegu and Busan. And it's very likely that dry alerts will be expanded to more parts of the country. Do expect an abundance of sunshine, while parts of Gangwon province could see sporadic sleet during the day. And daily highs will be 2 to 4 degrees higher than yesterday in most parts. Bright spring sunshine continues, while we can look forward to much warmer conditions next week. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the globe.
And that's our time at this hour on Arirang News. As always, thank you for watching and goodbye.